Hello, hello. Good afternoon, everybody. It looks like it's 2 o'clock. So I want to begin this afternoon by welcoming all the attendees to this breakout session on the topic of the business plan. I get the majority of you all after lunch, so I hope that I'm able to share some insightful information on this topic of the business plan that can really help take your efforts of either working through this document, this process a little bit smoother with some foundational tips and tricks to really complete that business plan for whatever the intended purpose or use is going to be for that business plan. So just to kind of test out the chat feature here a little bit, I wanted to ask the attendees, if you are a startup business, can you type in a number 1 into the chat box? And if you are an existing business, type in number 2. So we'll take a minute here for see if we get a little bit of testing components to our chat feature here of the platform to see if I can get a couple of responses here. So 1, if you're a startup small business, and 2, if you're an existing small business. All right, so don't have any responses yet, but I'm going to go ahead and get started with today's breakout on the business plan overview. I'm sharing my screen here. It's a presentation that's going to walk us through the aspects of the business plan, the outline, the different components. And at the end of this workshop, then I'm going to open it up to the chat box for any of the attendees to ask me some questions that I can address regarding the business plan. And then we're also going to we're going to go over some tools, some web pages, some different documents that I recommend as templates that can help out with the effort of the business plan. So that's something that we'll do as well before we get to the question portion of the session today. So I want to take a quick moment here and just introduce myself real quick. My name is Hector Ramirez, and I'm a business advisor with the Small Business Development Center at UTSA. We provide services to anybody looking to start a small business or looking to expand a small business. I've been working as a small business development advisor for approximately 6 years now, and have some background in small business lending, small business banking, also some background with incubators and economic development corporations. So that's the background that I bring over to the UTSA Small Business Development Center as an advisor. The business plan is a big component, an important factor when thinking about starting up a small business or looking to expand an existing business. I'm going to go ahead and expand here the presentation to full screen mode. And I'm going to shut off my camera for a bit here. That way I'm less of a distraction on that end. So bear with me one moment here while I expand that presentation. All right. So the business plan, like I was mentioning, is a very important factor to any small business that's looking to start up or expand. Here, we just want to, before we jump into the meat and bones of today's overview, we want to give just some recognition to our corporate affiliates at the UTSA Small Business Development Center. So the Small Business Development Center, if you're located in the metro area of San Antonio, our center covers 11 counties and services small businesses in that 11 county area that surrounds Bexar County. But no matter where you're at, you have a small business development center that can provide you with services. And those services include one-on-one no-cost business advising, and also workshops like this one that we're participating in together today, all focused and geared towards small business. So we highly encourage you, no matter where you're located in Texas, to utilize the Small Business Development Center because it is a tool and a resource, technical assistant program to help you with your small business, and in the form of providing one-on-one advising and low-cost workshops catered all to small business. If you also are a client of an SBDC center, you get access to specialty centers that are located in the San Antonio IED, Institute of Economic Development. So those specialty centers, we listed a couple of examples here. We have an international trade center that focuses on helping small businesses that are importing and exporting, and foreign investors looking to invest capital in small businesses in our coverage areas. We also have a procurement technical assistance center that helps out small businesses that are venturing into government contracting opportunities and exploring government contracting. Another example is just SBDC Net, which is a huge, tremendous, great resource when it comes to the business plan process and the market plan process, and site selecting process as well. So they are a department that focuses on providing information, tools, and research for our small business clients, all to help you make better decisions when starting up or expanding your small business, and information that can be very useful along the way. So what we will cover here today for the business plan overview is we're going to talk about the traditional business plan, the one that you would typically put together and prepare for a bank or an investor. That's the one we're going to focus on for today's discussion. And we're going to break down the outline of what that business plan looks like. And we'll talk in detail, in basic detail, about each of those sections of the traditional business plan, and then also go over some tools that we'll use to formulate and put that business plan together. So we'll review and discuss some of those tools. So before beginning the business plan process, we have to understand what we're jumping into. And what we recommend our small business clients to do is to go through this development process here on this slide. We would like for you to do a feasibility first, figure out, does it make sense for you to start the process of developing that business plan for that concept that you have in mind, or for that expansion that you have in mind? What is the intended goal, and who are you writing that business plan for, is something to factor in throughout the development process. Because an internal business plan will look very different to a business plan that's going to be used for an external party or an individual to take a look at and review. So that's something to keep in mind. And also, when it comes to the goals, we want to know what is the goal term that we want to portray in this business plan. Is this business plan going to show the image of what we intend to look like when we first get started and the first initial couple of years, or is this business plan for a 10-year phase project? So that's something to think about as to what are the intended goals for the business plan, and how are they going to look like in that business plan. A couple things to consider here is, and one of the questions we get often is what the length should be of that business plan. And there's no standardized length that you need to obtain. As long as you feel that while you put that business plan together, and once it's polished up, that it portrays and gives the intended information that's supposed to be given, that's gonna be what the length is. There's no standardized length. But what I can share is that the typical length that we see for traditional business plans varies anywhere from about I would say about 12 to maybe 24 pages in total, including the whole plan. So it might fall within that range, anywhere from 12 to 24 pages, but it all really depends on various factors as to how long or how short that business plan is. The second thing to consider there is how much time can you expect to devote to it? And that's a good one there. So something really important to factor in is that this business plan development process is going to take some time. I like to say it's time equity, not monetary equity, not capital equity, but it's time equity that you are going to invest in this process. So it's something to really factor and think about before jumping into it. What I've experienced with clients that I've worked with for the past 6 years as an SBDC advisor is that the traditional business plan typically takes anywhere from about 3 weeks to about 3 months to put together. 3 week, getting it completed from that rough draft all the way to a polished draft in 3 weeks is a huge, quick accomplishment because we all understand that you have obligations and stuff to take care of personally outside from working on this business plan. So that's one of the main factors as to why it takes that duration, because we have other things that are taking our attention away from working and drafting up that plan. It really varies as to how long you're going to invest into it. But the typical range, how I mentioned that I've seen and experienced, has been 3 weeks to 3 months. And the average tends to be about a month and a half. So it really you need to factor in that time devotion factor into the business plan process. A small business development advisor like myself is going to be with you along the way, but we typically and for the most part do not prepare and do business plans for our clients. I like to say we are 20% of the process, and the client, you, the entrepreneur, the small business owner, is going to be putting 80% of the effort. So it's an 80-20 relationship there. The 20% of your advisor is probably going to be helping you with the template, helping you figure out the correct formatting, giving you feedback on the content that you're including in the plan, maybe helping you kind of expand a little bit on that content, and making sure that it has the correct information for the intended use of that business plan. So that's the 20% factor of what your SBDC advisor would tag along with you throughout this process. The other 20%, it has to come from you. And we wanted to come from you because you are the one that has that vision and goals and mission and that pursuit for that business. So it can be challenging at times to get your thoughts from what you have in your mind. You have that business plan more than likely already in your mind. It's just kind of bringing it down, putting pen to paper, and expressing it in a written fashion that can be challenging at times. I like to say when we do these workshops in person pre-COVID, and I would do this training, I would start the training by mentioning that it's kind of a love-hate relationship with this business plan process, because the love part is that hopefully it gets you to a point where you feel comfortable operating your business, and it's a guide that helps you along the way, or it's a business plan that helps you obtain that capital that you're looking for. So that's the love part. And the hate part is it is gonna kind of suck up that time equity, and maybe encounter some writer's block here and there in putting it together. But ultimately, it's a very insightful process. That I can for sure say that if you work on the business plan on your own and do it alongside with the help of an SBDC advisor, it's going to be very insightful as you work through it. And it could also be a process that helps you maybe decide not to start with this concept or venture at this given time once you've put more pen to paper. So it could also maybe save you some capital as well. There's various components and aspects as to how this business plan development process can be helpful. Other thing to consider there, do I need to work on a traditional business plan, or can I get away with just putting together a financial proposal? And that's a good question there. For the most part, when it comes to a startup business, typically you're going to need to put together a full-blown traditional business plan, like the one that we're going to kind of go over and discuss in this workshop. When it comes to an expansion of a small business, at times you can probably get away with just putting together a financial proposal, pretty much crunching those numbers and seeing if it makes sense for that expansion, and then tagging on a executive summary to that, just kind of in brief, talking about what the expansion plans look like for the project. So an expansion is probably more suitable for just that financial proposal tagged along with an executive summary. But for a startup business, it's more than likely going to have to be the full-blown traditional business plan. And then we have another factor there to consider is about financing. Can small businesses obtain 100% financing? And to be very frank and honest there, it's very few between in which we see that occurring. In most cases, any financial institution and even investors, even capital investors or angel investors, are going to want the small business owner to factor in and put some skin in the game in regards to capital. So it's something that we don't see quite often. At times, we've heard of banks maybe focusing on existing specific industries and financing specific type of assets, maybe at 100%, but we really don't hear of that quite often. Typically, there has to be some percentage of capital skin in the game in the project. So first talking about the feasibility that we recommend before jumping into working on the business plan. And it's 3 factors that we lay out and we recommend for you to walk through before jumping into working on that business plan. First, be able to kind of define the concept and the idea that you have. Figure out what are the main objectives that need to occur within the business or the concept for it to be successful. And also consider what also personal objectives is this business gonna allow you to have or grant you. Is this something that really fulfills a passion that you have, or really solves a issue that you personally feel needs to be addressed? Those are things to think about. What are the objectives, both personally and on the business side, and be able to really envision what the true business concept is that's going to be the driver of the whole business plan. After that is going to be analyzing the market and figuring out, is there a current target market that's looking for this solution, this product, this service? What does that target market look like? Am I able to define that customer? What's that ideal profile look like of that target market that's going to be seeking out this product or service? And also, what is the current competition in the market that I'm venturing into? And then there's always going to be some sort of competition, either indirect or direct. So kind of laying out comparison of the competition landscape is something to think about in this feasibility process. And then the third component is going to be the requirements. What's the experience needed to run and operate this type of business that's offering this product or service? What is going to be the time commitment? What are the legal components of getting this business started or getting this business expanded? What are the capital requirements as well for getting started or expanding this business? So those are some requirement factors to really think about, put some thought behind before jumping in to the business plan development process. And once that analysis is done, if everything still feels right to really invest your time in the business plan, then that's when it's time to get started on that rough draft. If it does not feel right, there's components that are hard to address, or a market to truly define, or the capital required is not there at this given time, then we might want to pause on starting the business plan process and maybe reevaluate at a later point in time, or maybe think about a different business concept, product or service that does have an addressable market that you can pursue. So that this is the visual of the feasibility process that we recommend. So going over kind of what the typical structure looks like of the traditional business plan, here are five main components. The cover letter, which typically shows the logo, the name of the business, name of the owner, contact information of the drafter of the business plan, maybe a time when it was started and worked on. It could say summer 2021, something along those lines. So that's what's typically included in that cover letter. The table of contents is something that we see in traditional business plans often, but not really a requirement. If the business plan is not that lengthy, our table of content is probably not necessary. If it is kind of lengthy, maybe hitting that 22 pages, 25 pages, 30 pages, then you might want to include a table of content to help the reader navigate through the document. The business plan itself, and by that we mean the narrative portion of the plan, the financial portion of the business plan, and then the appendix. The appendix is mainly supporting documents that we want to include alongside the business plan. And I kind of skimmed over real quick the narrative and the financials because though that is truly the two major components of the traditional business plan. It's pretty much narrative, summaries, and financials, numbers, projections. So when I get started with helping out a client through the business plan, I ask that client, are you more of a narrative, word typing individual? Can you express yourselves in paragraphs and in words, or do you better express yourself in numbers? And based on what the feedback and what the reply is to that question, then that's where I recommend that individual to get started with their business plan. If you're a numbers person, get started with the projections, the financials first, all the numbers first, and then you'll be able to tell the story on the narrative side much easier based on the numbers that you've put together. And vice versa. If you're a narrative person, word, paragraph person, then work on the narrative portion of the plan first. And then after that, express the similar story of the narrative with some projections and numbers. And it'll come much easier once you're leaning on what you've typed in on the narrative. So it really depends as to what comes easier to you, numbers or words, as to what should be the starting point. So going over the narrative outline, these are the typical areas of the narrative. It's going to be the executive summary, the mission statement. It is going to be the first narrative topics at the beginning of the plan. But just to mention, the executive summary is one that's done at the very end, even though it's one of the first topics at the beginning of the plan. So that might be a little kind of confusing there, but the reason why that topic is at the very front is because it's meant for an external reader to review that executive summary. So as a drafter, you'd be working on that at the very end, because you would want to work on all the other topic areas: the business description, the operating plan, the market analysis, the management profile, the sales strategy. And then once you have all of that prepared and written out, it's much easier to put together the executive summary, because all you're going to be doing is summarizing those topics that you've already addressed and worked on. So as a drafter, you circle back at the end and work on your executive summary at the very end. As a reader, you're going to read the executive summary first, and that's why it's at the very front, the very top of the business plan. So at times in the past, I've had clients that get stuck in that executive summary, trying to do that at the very beginning, get a little bit of writer's block there. And it's difficult because all the other areas haven't been addressed. So that's the reason why that writer's block occurs. So I tell my clients, skip the executive summary, jump to the meat and bones of the narrative, and then circle back later on to the executive summary. And it'll be much easier because you'd just be grabbing bits and pieces of what you've already drafted in the other sections and purely just summarizing them. So going into the business description. In the business description, you would typically lay out the name of the business, where the business is located. Is it going to be home-based? Is it going to be a physical commercial location? Is it industrial? Is it office? Is it retail? What does the location look like? Who owns the business? What's the legal structure of the business? How is it formally registered with the state of Texas? And what stage is this business in? Is it kind of pre-revenue concept stage? Is it just started, early startup? Is it an existing business looking to expand? What's the stage of the business is factors to illustrate and mention in the business description portion. Continuing on to the business description, you also want to mention what industry you're in, and tagged along with what industry you're in, you might also want to include what your primary NAICS code is. And that is NAICS, NAICS code. And what that stands for is North American Industry Classification System. And that's just a kind of a long acronym there from the Census Bureau, the federal agency that designates and categorizes what product or service you're in. So it's a code, number code that just is an identifier of the product or service that you're offering. And it's fairly easy to find out that NAICS code. You just go to the Census Bureau and search up, put some keywords of the product or service that you're in, and you'll typically find a primary one that fits the activity of your industry. And if you need help with that, your small business development advisor can definitely help you navigate through finding out what your NAICS code is. They're pretty broad codes, so you might not find an exact match. But as long as you're very close or similarly close to what that NAICS code is describing, then that's more than likely going to be your primary. And you can also have secondary and third NAICS code. So we encourage, if that needs to be the case, you can do that as well. You can set one as your primary and set a secondary or a third code that supplements what you do. So that's also something to keep in mind. In the business description, you'd also want to put what are the products and services that your company offers. You would also want to include what are some strengths and challenges of the current team that's involved in the business. And then what are some general goals that you have for the business? And how are those goals going to be laid out? Is it going to be laid out in a 6-month time frame, 1 year, 2 year, 3 year, 5 year? So just kind of describing as to what the foundational layout of your goals are going to be should be factored into the business description side. So on the operations narrative portion, you would want to mention a little bit more in detail about your location. Maybe what are your hours of operation? If you're a service business that has foot traffic, or a retailer that has foot traffic, what does your facility look like? What is the main equipment items that you need to operate? What does the business model look like? All from the kind of the awareness of the market, knowing about your service, till the delivery and the closure of that sale. What does that transaction flow look like? What's the main supplies that you need, and what's the typical personnel and labor that you need to operate? So those are some factors to include in that operational plan. Pretty much breaking down, starting from what the model looks like of operating, and then breaking it down into its components: facility, people, the hours of operation, and main supplies and equipment needed. The next topic area, which I consider a very, very crucial and important area of the narrative of the business plan, is going to be the market analysis. So you want to make sure that you clearly lay out in the market analysis what market, geographic market you're focusing on, and within that geographic market, what is your target market that you're pursuing. Your target market might be broken into certain segments. So you want to lay out those segments. Maybe you're going to have a primary target market, and then you might have a secondary or third. But being able to clearly define who your target market is going to be very important. And the way to think of that from the beginning is going to be, is your business B2C, business to consumer, or is it B2B, business to business? And in a lot of cases, you're going to be either or, B2C or B2B. And in some small businesses, you might have both components. You might be B2C and B2B, but there has to be in most cases, there's a certain percentage split between that. So I'll give the example of maybe a cleaning, janitorial small business. Sometimes those businesses are both. They're serving residential consumers, and they're also servicing commercial locations. So those are two there's B2C and it's B2B. But there's typically going to be a heavier concentration of one or the other. So if it's 80% residential, we want to make sure that we express that and also demonstrate the 20% of the business to business side, the commercial side, and what are the typical businesses, the industries that janitorial cleaning business is going to service. Those are components of starting to lay out and clearly define who the target market is and who the client is. Other components of the market analysis is to talk a little bit about the demand of the product or service in that geographic area. Is there a strong demand? Is it a demand that's not being fulfilled by current competitors? And that's a good segue there. What we'd also want to make sure that we include in the market analysis is a competitive analysis of the competitors in the area. So we want to break that down into who are the direct competitors and who are indirect competitors that are alternatives that the target market can consider aside from ourselves. And what's the value proposition and how are we different from that competition that we illustrate and mention in this competitive analysis is important. Because if it's tough to define what is different from the current competition, then it really is something that shows weakness on the side of being able to satisfy that customer base, that target market, because the competitive landscape is just going to be very, very difficult since there's not a defined differentiator there from you and the competition. For the existing business, we would also want to include in that area of the market analysis is there going to be any changes in regards to who the target market is with this new growth of this existing business. So that's something that we would want to lay out in that plan if there's any new segments of market that will be served with the expansion. For help on market research, there's some resources out there that you can access generally, and it's open to the public on the internet. But at the same time, if you work with a small business development center, there is a specialty center like that I introduced at the beginning of this workshop called the SBDC Net. That is a big resource in helping out our clients obtain market research that they could use in this section of the business plan of the market analysis. So we would highly encourage you to connect with your small business advisor. That way you can leverage those tools at that specialty center of the SBDC Net. The SBDC Net also has a public website that you can access. No matter if you are an SBDC client or not, you have access to their webpage that's listed on this slide here, and you can find a lot of free, easy to access information just purely from going to their website without even having to be an SBDC client. But obviously, if you are an SBDC client, you get a little bit more further advantages of utilizing the SBDC Net. So the sales strategy is another topic area. And in that sales strategy, we would encourage you to include a little bit about what the pricing structure looks like for your product or service. How are you going to get paid? Is it cash? Is it invoicing with terms of net 30, net 60? What is the way that you're going to fulfill the delivery of the product or service once you have a customer client that has paid you or has promised to pay? How do you intend on promoting the business? What is the convenience and customer service that you will be providing throughout this sales strategy kind of cycle that you're going to be offering? And that factor is very important there, of convenience, and that key word in there, being able to make it easy for your customer client to pay for your product or service is very important. Nowadays, we want to make sure that we don't toss in any unnecessary barriers in closing a sale. So the leanest, the easiest we can make that sales transaction cycle work, the much better it is, the more productive, the more revenue that will generate. So we need to keep that in mind, that keyword of convenience when building up that sales strategy cycle. Management profile, we would recommend just listing who are the key individuals, the key personnel in the business, and a little description as to what their tasks and duties are. We state here on the slide that you might want to consider putting an organizational chart in the section of the management profile, but it truly really isn't necessary. Most small businesses probably don't have a large personnel table and chain of command. So if that's not the case, you could ignore that and just not include it in there. We would just recommend putting the key departments and key individuals with a short write-up, a couple sentences of their duties and responsibilities in the management profile. If it's mainly you, it's an owner-operator, you're the only internal owner and operator of the business. Talk a little bit about your background, your experience in this arena, in this field, and what your main duties are going to be on a day-to-day basis. And if that's the case, and even if it's not the case, if it's an owner-operator, one-man shop, or if it's a 8-person small business, we would encourage you to think about including an external advisory informational table there as to who are you leveraging externally from your business for help. So that external advisory group may be an attorney, might be a CPA, might be a good bookkeeper, might be your SBDC advisor. So those are the people that you want to mention as external advisors to the business. And that does speak volume when it comes to presenting a traditional business plan to a bank or an investor. That way they get the sense of comfort that you're not venturing this purely on your own, that you're surrounding yourself with guidance and assistance with individuals that have background that can serve of value in you starting up and getting the business going. The financial analysis. We've talked about the narrative portion. In this section, we're jumping into the financial portion. And in that financial portion, these are the typical areas that are included in the traditional business plan. For either an expansion or a startup, you would want to include a total project cost. What is the breakdown by numbers as to what it's going to cost to either start up that business or expand that existing small business? And that's typically laid out in a table format. Once you've identified those costs, then we want to figure out what are going to be the sources of capital that's going to come to the table to finance that total project cost. So let's say, for instance, the total project cost is $100,000 from where you are now to get started. We want to lay out where those $100,000 going to be coming from to fund this project. So maybe $80,000 might be in an SBA loan, and $20,000 is going to be owner's injection that's going to come into the picture. So that would be the sources and uses there. We would also recommend including projected income statements in the profit and loss, and also the cash flow statement and the balance sheet, which are the three typical financial statements that a small business tends to have and use for management purposes. So for a startup, it would be a projected one. For an existing business, you would include information about your past historicals of your financials, the profit and loss, the cash flow and balance sheet, and then also some projections as to these are the projected numbers that we intend on achieving with this expansion. Alongside with those projected financials, you would include some key assumptions that are going to be factored in, and that's important. That way, whoever's analyzing those numbers knows how those numbers are being derived with those key assumptions that have been laid out. You might want to also include a capital equipment list, some personal financial statement, and that personal financial statement is typically a 1 or 2 page document that lays out your personal net worth, your personal assets, and your personal liabilities. It's pretty much the strength of the individual that's involved in this project from a financial standpoint. So that's a document that more than likely is going to be requested from you, but doesn't have to be tossed into the business plan. It can be separate from the business plan as a supplemental document, but it's just something to keep in mind when thinking about the number side of the business plan. And a break-even analysis is another one to really think about and keep in mind, illustrating to whoever's checking out that business plan as to what do you need to generate in revenue to at least cover your fixed and variable cost. That's always a good number to know, no matter what type of business you are, is understanding what your overhead is, and understanding that overhead that you have, no matter if you have 1,000 sales or 0 sales. So that break even is a good one to know, just purely for managerial purposes internally, and for you to show anybody externally that you understand what you need to cover to at least break even. To talk a little bit about here, the lenders, if you were to be presenting a traditional business plan to a bank, these are the typical aspects that they would be reviewing. They would want to know what the total project costs look like that we mentioned in the previous slide. They would want to see if there's capacity for you to handle business debt. So they would be looking at the projections, the historical financials if it's an existing business, and they'll be looking at the managers and the operators. Do the managers and operators also have the capacity to run and operate this business and obtain the projections that they're projecting in the number side of the plan? They'll also take a look at credit history, and they would look at credit history on the personal end just to get an idea as to how do you manage credit in general. So that's one of the main reasons why a business lender may evaluate and pull your personal credit, is because they want to get a picture as to how you have managed credit on the personal side. The industry conditions, they want to know what the current environment looks like. They will analyze that. Is it is the conditions optimal for you to be getting and starting up this business or expanding your business at this given point in time? So that's a component there. Collateral, what are they going to be? What are the assets that are going to be backing up the loan that you're requesting from a lender? So those are typically the tangible assets: equipment, furniture, and fixtures, real estate, commercial vehicles. Those are example of collateral. So they'll take a look at what that collateral picture looks like. And then also character and reputation. They'll want to make sure that the operator, the owner, does happen to have a good reputation, good character to both work with stakeholders of their small business, and that they understand their field and their industry. So those are the components there of the factor of character that's analyzed from the lender standpoint. So a couple of just recommended action steps here. We'd recommend for you to consider working with your local small business development center and get connected with an advisor. That advisor is going to be helpful if you plan on getting into the business plan process. Before we get to questions, we are going to review just a couple of information and documents here that I want to share with you all. So bear with me a little bit while I do a couple of new screen shares here to show some tools that I recommend that you can use to get started and to work through the business plan process. So the first one that I'm going to show is going to be a outline. And this outline, I believe, has been shared from the portal here that we're using for this training. So it is a Word document that is structured in the format of you being able to answer some of the questions here that are being asked. And as you answer this business plan outline, you are pretty much formulating and putting together a rough draft of the business plan. So it's a really great tool to help get started with that initial rough draft that can propel you throughout the process of completing the business plan. So this is something good to think about utilizing as a tool to get started. And if this outline or template does not work for you, there's various templates out there. Your small business development advisor is more than likely going to recommend some directions and tools regarding templates, but this is just one example so you can have an idea of what that looks like. The other document that I'm going to share here is going to be an example business plan of a pizza restaurant, just so you can get an idea as to what the traditional business plan looks like. So now I'm sharing a PDF here of a traditional business plan of a pizza restaurant. This one's called Tsunami Pizza. This is the cover page, and this is a confidentiality agreement that sometimes is included in traditional business plans. But very honest with you, many people do not comply with this or say that they're going to stay away from signing any kind of confidentiality agreement. Table of content, and then it starts going into those topic areas: executive summary, objectives, mission statement, company summary, description, the startup cost. In this case, it's $50,000. Their startup table, what the assets that they need, the expenses they need to cover, what are the sources of of capital. In this case, the owners coming in with the full $50,000 on their own. The facility, location, their product, their market, their sales strategy. And then it starts going real deep into the financial projection portion of the plan. So this is just an example of a business plan for a restaurant. I believe this document has also been shared on the platform as well. But if you are unable to obtain it, please reach out to us and we'll make sure that you get a copy of these example documents. The other thing I'm going to share before we jump over to questions is I want to share a couple of web pages here. And those web pages are going to be some tools to look into and consider while working on the business plan. So bear with me 1 second while we review a couple of those individually. So the first one that I want to show is going to be this window here from the SBA. The SBA has a really good web page that shows the tools for getting started with a business plan. In this topic area, the difference between a traditional business plan, a lean kind of internal business plan are described. And then for the traditional business plan, it goes into the various topic areas that we discussed and went over. And it also provides some example documents as well of the traditional business plan, and also talks about that lean business plan as well. That's mainly used for internal purposes and describes the different components of it and shows an example document. So that's the first website that I wanted to share. I'll make sure to include these links in the chat box, so that way you have access to checking them out. So I'm going to copy paste them in there. That way you can have them handy. Bear with me one moment here. So there's the first one, the SBA Write a Business Plan page that goes over that great information there. The next one that I want to share and show is going to be the bplans.com. And bplans.com is a resource and a web page for anybody looking to look for sample business plans, for templates, for different guides that are components of writing your business plan. So this bplans.com is one that I share very often with clients that can really help them get started and learn about the different components and view some example business plans pertaining specifically to their industry that can help with that writer's block that can occur. So that's another one that I like to share with clients that get started. The next one that I'm going to show is going to be our specialty center called the SBDC Net. And the SBDC Net has an area in their website that's called business plan. And I'm gonna go back here a little bit. I want to start off by going to their main website, and that's the one that I'm going to include in the chat box. And what you'll do is once you're at the front page of their main website, you want to go to the Help Center and then select Business Plan. And once you go in there, select Business Plan, that should take you to their page where they have their resources of the business plan. Bear with me a little bit here while I refresh this page. There we go. So I went to the Help Center, I selected Business Plan, and I got to this page right here. And this page is going to give you just the typical structure of writing a business plan, some resource links that you can use and check out, some places where you can find additional resources for starting your business plan. And B Plans is actually one of them that's mentioned on here. And then it goes through a list of sample business plans in alphabetical order. So depending on your industry. So if you think about the first letter in your industry and scroll down this list, you might find a sample business plan for that particular industry. And those sample business plans, again, are very helpful in helping you get started and kind of trailblaze through that writer's block that can at times occur. And the last page that I want to show is going to be a resource that it's a paid tool resource that I like to recommend as an advisor, and it's called Live Plan. So Live Plan is a service that you would have to evaluate on your own and see if it's something that works for you, because there is a cost associated with it. But in my experience, I've gotten great feedback from the clients that have used LivePlan. And LivePlan is a cloud-based software that helps you through the process of developing your business plan. And it has a lot of features and bells and whistles to really help you out through the development of your plan. You create an account. Once you create and pay for your account, you'll have access to working on your life plan, on your business plan, from whatever computer that has internet access. And you're also able to add your SBDC advisor or whoever is helping you out through your business plan as a contributor to your life plan account. So it's not something that everybody chooses to go with. People prefer, if they can save their money and use that for another component of their business, they go that route and just do not consider something like LivePlan. But for some people that are comfortable with cloud-based software and want something that's a little bit more kind of intuitive and user-friendly, this is something to really think about and keep in mind as a tool. So I'm going to include their link also. I'm going to copy paste it and pop it into the chat box here. That way you have access to it. I forgot to do the SBDC Net one. So I'm going to do that one real quick here. Include the SBDC Net homepage, which is open to anybody. It's a public site with a lot of good information, and especially information when it comes to getting some assistance with the business plan. So wanted to make sure I definitely popped it into the chat box here. So that kind of concludes the documents and links that I wanted to share as supplemental information. So at this point in time, I want to open it up to questions that I could address from the attendees and see if I can give you some direction there on the topic. So I'm going to turn on my camera here for a little bit and take a pause for about 3 to 5 minutes or so to see if there's any questions that come into the chat box. So. Mr. Sanford, welcome. You're welcome. We're here to give information and share that with you, and we appreciate your participation today. Thank you. I'll stick around here for one more minute to see if there's any questions that come in. But in closing remarks, I want to thank all the attendees that attended today for listening to my little description here of the business plan. And hopefully you're able to get some tools and some direction and some information regarding the basic components of the business plan. So I definitely appreciate you tuning in and participating and being a part of the Texas Rule Challenge here and learning from all the different presenters and providers that are here to help out, continuing supporting small businesses and helping small businesses in our area thrive, get started, and expand. So I appreciate all of you for attending today. Cecilia, you're welcome. Thank you for participating and listening to me for a bit to share some info on the topic. All righty. Well, thank you very much. I'm going to close the broadcast here and have a great rest of your day and hope you enjoy the rest of the workshops at the Texas Rural Challenge. Goodbye.